prepared to board the medium mothership.
There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
All right, welcome to Edge Radio 99.3 FM, and this is Media Mothership for another week, where we explore everything in and around the world of media, how it shapes our reality around us, and as always, we're broadcasting out of Edge Radio Studios in Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. I'm your host, Dr. Craig, joined by Mr. Marcus Johnson.
How's it going?
Good. Quizmaster extraordinaire.
Yes! Next Test Pop Quiz, 18th of November at the Republic Bar and Cafe. Totally not sponsored content, sorry.
Where can people go to find out more?
Tazpop.org.au or hit up Tazpop on Facebook or on Instagram.
And that is a fun, exciting quiz show that explores popular culture. Are those headphones too loud?
There's a bit of an odd, like a trilling sound in the right one.
Oh, right.
But that's fine.
Maybe it's, as we were talking about before, with the character of the Master in Doctor Who having the drums, it's some kind of audio trigger that's going to
drive me insane and cause me to try to open up a portal to Gallifrey.
You see, I have plugged in quite a bit of technology to the desk for this show for the first time, and I'm wondering whether it's something which has... You can try those headphones.
I'm just going to have the headphones off today, I think, just because
Really?
I've had a lot of very bad experiences with mics going near speakers and feedback recently. So I'm just not that I don't trust your techie skills. It's just it's an irrational fear at this point.
I think that's well founded. So Marcus is here. We're going to unpack PAX, which he came back from, which occurred last Friday, which is the big video game, indie game, Nintendo, various fun game console experiences. So we'll unpack some of that, and we're going to look into some Doctor Who news, and bite off one of the old fan chestnuts, which is what order should you watch pop culture franchises in. So we're going to bite off 3 and talk about what order we should watch them in. So if you have questions or comments during the show, feel free to reach out and message us on the chat by SMS on 0488811707, or you can leave a message on the YouTube or Twitch stream. You can find us on YouTube or Twitch live streaming right now, visually as well, by searching Media Mothership on YouTube or Twitch. So feel free to post up a message and we'll try our best to acknowledge it. So keep listening to exciting news and events around Media Mothership.
Troubled by the multiple narratives? Ever question the possibility of a stable meaning? Want to deconstruct it all? Edge Radio doesn't just offer you media, we offer you Media Mothership. Media Mothership, designed to expose you to the simulacra of today for 1 hour of playful irony. What are you waiting for? Hop on the Media Mothership.
All right, first bit of interesting news that I've come across, neither of which it turns out speaks to our experience, was something on ABC News talking about the phenomena of silent walking, which is taking off on TikTok at the moment. When you heard the phrase silent walking, Marcus, what came to mind?
What came to mind for me was that silent walking is just walking in my book.
And what do you think the silent component would mean?
Well, if I hear the phrase silent walking, I just imagine someone with, I guess, noise dampening shoes walking in such a way that they themselves
Ninja.
do not make... Yeah, exactly,
Total.
ninja.
Yeah. No, it's more talking to that phenomena where typically this occurs, I guess, where people are on like a plane or they're on a bus or they're even walking to the shops or something, and you feel the need, or maybe you constantly have, earphones plugged in, listening to music. And that is not silent walking. That's what's referred to for some as their life walking. All right, they'll always walk with some sound on them. So the challenge on TikTok has been to walk without music or any form of things plugged in, playing sounds to you, which for some people it turns out to be a challenge, right? This is a TikTok I could actually do, I think, quite confidently. Usually I avoid the TikTok challenges, right? There was planking way back in the day. There was the one, the powder. Do you see the powder? Like you ate this powder?
The cinnamon
powder?
Cinnamon
Yeah.
challenge? And the Tide Pods, obviously.
Tide Pods, yeah. All of which are outrageous and none of which I've done. But this one's a really interesting one. I mean, for me, it opens up that broader question of, boredom, allowing yourself to be bored, allowing yourself to not be stimulated in a location and to instead just inhabit it. Whereas I think certainly, I guess the argument goes, most people, when they're feeling bored or when they're doing something menial, like walking locations, they'll put in a podcast, they'll put headphones on and listen to a podcast or listen to music. And the idea being that, are we losing something because we're having stimulation? That is, we're having this craving of needing stimulation because we don't want to be left alone to our own thoughts. We don't want that silence to creep in. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a psychologist would say it's really important to have boring time, right? Because there was that argument that's why there was that, like 5-8 years ago, there was that coloring in book boom, right? Everyone started getting coloring in books and really complicated ones and coloring in. And part of it was saying it's fun because it's boring. It's fun because it's not about, creating something which, is needed for your job or needed to serve a function. It is kind of dull.
It allows the mind to wander and not be focusing on all these different external stimuli, essentially.
The article raises some interesting question. Is constant distraction harmful? Right? I mean, if you're walking, and particularly if you're in a cityscape, one of the cliches is you shouldn't be walking and looking at your phone. You shouldn't be walking and trying to multitask by talking on your phone or anything else, because that distraction can mean you're not doing the other parts of walking at 100% or at a required attentive, don't cross the road if there's cars kind of moment. So many people are concerned that people who are cocooning themselves in distraction through audio, maybe placing themselves in unsafe situations, and also, maybe avoiding listening to their own thoughts. Do you listen? Sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you listen to your thoughts, Marcus?
100%. I make up stories in my head, or have review things that I've watched or read or listened to in the past while I'm walking, or make plans for what I'm going to do later on, or try to brainstorm questions to ask at a quiz night. Stuff like that. Just use that time when you're walking to sort of get your thoughts in order.
Yes. Rather, I mean, look, I am as guilty as the next person for listening to podcasts. This show is podcasted, and I'd love people to be listening to this show. So it is one which I am guilty of as well, of creating what some people would perceive as a problem, right? Content for podcasting, which people will use to just distract themselves, to get out of the moment. It is, are we addicted to our thoughts? Are we addicted to distraction? It, raises some big questions. Silent walking, though. I mean, I guess the next challenge within silent walking would also be that kind of mindfulness walking, right? Where you're aware of your thoughts and you're trying to be in the moment, though. So it's like, okay, I'm now thinking about cooking tonight. Stop thinking. Let's acknowledge that, and instead, I want to be mindful of walking. The breeze is on my face, the sound of my footsteps, something like this. So that's an even more challenging task, right? So that would be the next level if you were playing a video game. Start silent walking without audio, then mindfulness walking. Yeah, I'm going to set that up as my TikTok trend. We do have content on TikTok for Media Mothership, which you can listen to. However, I want to introduce the next segment with a short little audio clip, and we'll see how many people can identify what the topic is.
Sometimes I think there's something missing. Like I had something lovely, and it's gone. I lie in bed thinking, what have I lost?
I've got this friend called Donna Noble. I had to wipe her memory to save her life. If she remembers me, she will die.
All right, and that, of course, is the unmistakable tones of David Tennant. We had the TARDIS wheezing, so it is Doctor Who. And Marcus, I know you're in as a huge Doctor Who fan.
I don't believe in destiny.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
I mean, what's your Doctor Who qualifications? If I had to, what places you in possibly a league above someone that just watches it?
Oh man, I wouldn't necessarily give myself qualifications when it comes to New Who. I watched most of the original that still exists because it started around this time 20 years ago, 2003, with the 40th anniversary. They re-aired everything from the first 7 Doctors
on ABC.
Yes,
right?
Monday to
they
Thursday.
Had William Hartnell. I remember that. That was a long time ago. That was like 15 years ago? 20 years ago, yeah. I was not in Hobart.
Something entered this world.
Yeah, I remember watching it because I was 13 when it started. So I remember watching it with my parents when they watched it when they were teenagers, and children as well. It was a lot of fun watching it as a family over dinner on TV. And I watched most of it. I remember I didn't see a huge amount of Sylvester McCoy. Purely because one, there's not. Like he's only in I think 42 episodes, and this was on in summer when I was out doing things. If I can save your life, TV at 6 o'clock at night.
This is interesting because what we're hearing here is Marcus Johnson's autobiographical engagement with Doctor Who, right? So what's the earliest memory you have of Doctor Who?
My earliest memory,
if we were to do a chronology of like what's your experience of Doctor Who from its earliest memory?
Watching the first episode in November of 2003.
2003, right?
Yes.
And that was when they relaunched it or rebroadcast it from William Hartnell on.
Absolutely, from the very first episode. Yep.
2003.
Yep.
So, what made you watch it? What was a reason that? Because you were an adult by then.
No, I wasn't.
You, sorry. Well, that's right. You don't age. I forget that. You've
I was
always
13.
been in this body. How old were you?
I was
Oh, sorry. my computer's working.
13 in 2003. I was born in 1990.
Right.
And a lot of it was the enthusiasm that my parents had for it, just because they had grown up watching the show as well. Because the show started when they were 4 or 5.
Yes.
And then they watched it all the way through to when it ended when they were in their late 20s.
Wow. Right. So you're in a Doctor Who family.
Absolutely.
But you hadn't watched anything, or in your memory, all right, no distinctive engagement until 2003, restarted. And then, so not only did you watch it, you watched it in order then, right? You kind of watched most of it because the ABC broadcast was fantastic because they started in the order that they were produced, right, from 1963?
Yes.
Yep, which is why it was 2003.
It was the 40th anniversary. And it was around the time that they announced they were working on making a revival series.
Yep.
Because I think they announced it around the 40th, and they cast Christopher Eccleston in 2004.
Yes.
I believe that's also when they filmed most of it. Because I remember that, it aired around April 2005.
Yes, so very, very memorable. So we'll quickly hear a quick version of the theme, and we'll get my guest host in the studio to join in now that we're doing the chronological experience of Doctor Who. Yes, no, there we go. So, as we were talking about, the reason I'm asking Taylor his experience about Doctor Who is because an article came out in Denver talking about what's the best order to watch Doctor Who. And there were 3 modes, from easy mode to hard mode to ultra hard mode. Right? But before we get into these modes of watching it, I was curious to know what our own experiences are of watching it. Right, so Marcus was saying he watched it when the ABC 40th anniversary replayed all the episodes from William Hartnell 1963 onwards. What was your first chronological experience of Doctor Who?
Same.
Yep. Would you, off the cuff, have a order that you would recommend someone watch Doctor Who in? Like, let's say it's someone not seen Doctor Who before and they say, I really want to watch it. What order would you just off the cuff say you should watch it in?
Classic series.
Right, so you'd go back how far? Like to William Hartnell?
William Hartnell, yeah.
And tell them to watch it from like episode 1?
Yeah.
And then, wow! That's a purist, I would say.
Yep.
That's great. It's a model. It is definitely a model.
Classic series.
Classic series.
Then new series.
Classic series
then
all the way
audio.
up to Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah.
Yep. And then audio.
And then new series and then audio.
So you do it kind of in production order, right? Because or the audio, or no, not production order, because the audio adventures were kind of between Sylvester McCoy or kind of. Anyway, what order would you put in, Marcus? What order would you suggest someone watch Doctor Who in?
So my addendum to that would be I'd agree with production order, but because the audio dramas have been made since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
They've been going on consistently, and the audio dramas are unique in that they kind of do whatever they want. So they could
get some of the old cast back. They've had like some of the doctors they've had brought back for the audio adventures.
Every surviving Doctor has been in an audio adventure. So Tom Baker took a very long time to come back, but Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann have all done many, many, many audio adventures, and they're all completely out of order. They wake up one morning, they say we want to do one with the 8th Doctor this week and the 6th Doctor this next week, and we want to have a multi-Doctor story with the 5th and the 8th Doctors the week after that.
Why did Tom Baker take so long? I mean, such a fan favourite, and there would have been such pressure.
Because there's a few reasons there. One of them is that Doctor Who, playing the Doctor for 7 years, typecast him for life.
Yeah.
he struggled to get much work of any substance after he stopped playing the Doctor. And he basically had to go into voiceover work to earn a living.
It's quite a funny thing because he started off as a builder, so
He
landed
Harrison
this role
Ford,
as his
like,
first
after.
role. Yeah.
Oh no, wasn't he in Sinbad? Like he had like not a major role, but he was in Sinbad as the villain.
Yeah, he'd
He was,
also played Rasputin in Nicholas and Alexandria, and I believe he got a Golden Globe nom for it. He had been an actor for a while, but it's a similar thing to Harrison Ford. People think Harrison Ford was a carpenter who got into Star Wars, but he was originally an actor, became a carpenter because he couldn't get any work as an actor. Same with Tom Baker.
Tom Baker was like, okay.
Tom Baker he'd been acting for a while. A lot of his work was done on the stage, but he had done TV and film prior to Doctor Who. But his mental health has never been great.
Who?
Tom Baker's.
Oh, really?
So he basically had a really nasty divorce and a complete breakdown, gave away all of his possessions.
Really?
And he was just living at a pub and working as a bricklayer.
Oh, this was before he got cast as Doctor Who.
This was a year or two before he got past the Doctor
Really?
Who. Absolutely.
His life was really dark.
And it was really dark, and playing the Doctor actually was what helped pull him out of that depression for a while. But the problem is that he got so wrapped up in playing the Doctor that he would start to feel guilty for not going out and actually saving the world on a weekly basis. And he would get really combative with anyone who disagreed with his vision for the show. Like he'd actually direct over directors, and he'd snore through script readings if he didn't like the lines.
Oh, wow.
And he'd throw stuff out and improvise. And he was, by all accounts, when he was good, he was great. But if he was having a bad day, he was an absolute nightmare to work with. And but because he stayed in the role for 7 years, he was so identifiable as the Fourth Doctor because he hadn't had many major roles before that. And although they did exist, but basically he found it very difficult to get work. So he resented the show for a while, and he also didn't really want to share the spotlight with any other doctors.
Right.
So, but he's mellowed a lot in his older age.
Yes, because he even had a small cameo appearance in, was it a Matt Smith?
Yeah, in the
Doctor
50th
Who
anniversary
version?
special.
Yeah. So, I did not realize that. All right. So, anyway, so as we were saying, audio adventures, and it's pretty much had all the living doctors.
Yes, because the audio adventures have come out consistently for the last, I think, 20 years. I agree with Taylor, you need to consume Doctor Who in production order, and that includes listening to the audios and alternating them with New Who, just so you're getting all the information at the same time. Because there are
production order.
Because
Okay.
there are references to the audio adventures in some New Who episodes.
Ah, right. Which is why production order would be useful because, yes, that will be in conversation. It'll be in a synced conversation, right? Because it's not like you're watching things out of the time when the production would have known about it or not.
Because Paul McGann was in the TV movie in 1996, which was supposed to be a pilot for a whole TV
the
show.
US.
Never went anywhere.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
This is a hill I'm prepared to die on. Paul McGann is the best casting choice I ever made for the Doctor. Prepared to die on that hill.
Yeah, I loved him bringing back, like, there was the special cameo again he had in the Death of the Doctor or whatever it was. The
Night
Day
of the Doctor.
Night of the Doctor, yeah. And you see him giving this standout performance in a very short moment. But it was great.
In a webisode that was never meant to be broadcast
Oh, it was
on
webisode.
TV. Yeah, you were only supposed to watch it on.
I saw that.
But because he'd been in the audio dramas and had gone from someone who'd only had 60 minutes of screen time because he's not in the first third of the TV movie,
Yep.
and then built up this huge fan following because he did such a stellar job in the audio dramas and built up this supporting cast of characters. And when he's dying before his regeneration in The Night of the Doctor, he actually name checks the companions he had in the audio dramas and drinks a toast to them.
Wow, so that's a deep cut for fans who had done their homework with the audio dramas for this Doctor, for whom most people would only have a vague recollection of the movie, if that. Yeah,
because the most fans of the audio dramas, similar to fans of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, will say that the audio dramas are superior to the TV series because they're not constrained by budget nor by major broadcasting standards, nor by having to fit into a specific time slot.
Much like people say about this show, that it holds up really well on the podcast, the YouTube stream. It's really constrained. Anyway, sorry. Okay, let's go through the modes now. So easy mode. Den of Geek says the easy mode to introduce people into watching Doctor Who.
Yeah.
The order that you should suggest them in is so it sets it up by saying, Doctor Who has been many different shows over its 60-year history, and not all of those shows will appeal to different people. If this is your first time approaching the classic series after developing a love for Doctor's post-Christopher Eccleston adventures, it's best to take it carefully. So then it sets up their chronological order is a potted history of what are considered the best episodes. So it suggests start with what many fans would consider as really good, proper Who. So Douglas Adams' The City of Death.
Of course.
Yeah. Bit of a safe choice, I guess.
Yeah.
Most of the stories written by Philip Hinchcliffe, right? Or not written, is it? You were pointing out that he's not the writer. He's the...
Philip Hinchcliffe was the producer. For many stories for the first 3 years of the Tom Baker era. Robert Holmes was the head writer, and Robert Holmes is basically the definitive Doctor Who writer for the classic series.
So
does that include the books? Because I've got a couple of books by Hinchcliffe, which are dramatizations of like the show.
Right. Yeah, so that, and he would have written those.
Yeah.
If we've got his name, I'd hoped he wouldn't put his name on something he didn't write.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're talking Seeds of Doom, Carnival of Monsters, Remembrance of the Daleks, and Caves of Androzani. Yep. They're all stories that feature the Doctor at his most Doctorish, big showy monsters and clever dialogue, all the stuff that first drew them to stories of Ood and the Slitheen. I guess that's the new. Then maybe even dip into the first episode ever, Unearthly Child, right? Because that does, if you're a fan of the new Doctor, New Who, it has some parallels with Russell T Davies' Rose. And then it suggests skipping the 3 episodes of RADA. Oh, RADA trained actors. So although maybe skip the following 3 episodes of RADA trained actors doing their best caveman impressions.
Yeah,
because because after the Unearthly Child, what's the next episode? It's cavemen.
The serial is called 1 Million Years BC, where they go back in time. The first episode of Doctor Who is brilliant, but the remaining episodes in that serial are not very good.
This is because what are RADA? Is that a British
Royal Acting Drama Academy?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's basically NIDA, but in
the British version of NIDA.
Okay, so these are highly trained actors who are just doing cavemen. All right, so skip that. Then get into some challenging stuff. So it suggests Sylvester McCoy's stories like Survival and Battlefield, or what this article refers to as the Brilliantly Nasty Happiness Patrol. What do we think? Survival, Battlefield,
Happiness Patrol's a great episode.
Is it
I would
brilliantly
put that
nasty? Well, it says brilliant.
I suppose, yeah.
Is it nasty? What's nasty about Happiness Patrol? I've not seen it.
There's a killer robot called the Candyman.
The Candyman.
He's like, he has a really high-pitched voice. He goes, I make sweets, Doctor. Boiling sweets that I pour down people's throats like... He's basically an 80s slasher movie villain.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, a lot of 80s Who actually, for some reason, takes a lot of stylistic influence from slasher movies and video nasties. Obviously with a greatly reduced level of violence and nudity, but in terms of some of the choices they make when they're trying to be scary. I think it's really weird they put Remembrance of the Daleks on there as one that's easy to watch, because I love it, but it's the combination of every Davros story.
This is Philip Hinchcliffe again. Yeah. Philip Hinchcliffe's Remembrance of the Daleks.
Because that was written by Ben Aronovich.
Well, again, produced by?
No, Philip Hinchcliffe had left the series ages before.
I'm going to write some comments on this article. I'll attribute you, of course, Marcus.
I mean, to that point, Remembrance of the Daleks is, when I was a child, was my favourite episode of Classic Who.
Yeah. Oh, it's a stellar. It's a stellar, but it's better if you have watched.
Oh, definitely.
The other 80s era Dalek stories, because it will make a lot more sense.
Yeah. Okay, so then it goes on to talk about some old stories. So try William Hartnell's The Time Meddler or Patrick Troughton's Tomb of the Cybermen. Do those stand up? Time Meddler, Tomb of Cybermen? Tomb of Cybermen, I do remember.
Tomb of the Cybermen is super racist.
Okay, I've blanked on those. What's the racism of Tomb of Cybermen?
It has an almost mute Afro-British strongman who gets corrupted by the Cybermen, and the doctor has some line along the lines of, "You allowed yourself to be enslaved," and then he sacrifices himself to save his white employers. And it's very, very, very problematic.
Okay. Yeah.
In the actual
Sidemen,
script,
right.
in the script, and it's not that it makes it less problematic, but in the script he's meant to be deaf, which is why he barely speaks, and his hearing aid is supposed to be foreshadowing of how he'll be upgraded by the Cybermen, which is still, which in its own way is problematic because it says that people with hearing issues are going to be, they're easily corrupted, but it's just so problematic. But the actual story is good. It's like a 30s Universal horror movie, and it has probably the two best dialogue exchanges that Patrick Troughton's Doctor actually has. There's the very first one because it was the first episode of Series 5. The first serial of Series 5, and they introduce the companion who was introduced in the final serial of the previous season comes along, and they introduce her to the TARDIS, and they recap the show, and it's basically a recap for anyone who's watching Doctor Who for the first time. It's really well done. And then there's another one there's another scene which is only added to fill in time, where the Doctor talks about his family and how everyone has such, and he's got to really want to think about them, but he has such an interesting life going around and exploring that. Like, what's the line? It's nobody else can do the things that we're doing. That's what makes our lives so interesting, or something along those lines.
Tomb of the Cybermen.
But it's very problematic, so be aware of that going in.
Well, I'm glad you foreshadowed the problematic nature of it, because then it suggests gradually turn the crank until you're explaining that Talons of Chiang is widely considered a classic so long as you look past the Oriental racism and the way the story's plot slows to a crawl for most of the middle episodes. That's the problem with a lot of the six-part serials, is that they run out of steam very quickly. Yes.
Most of the really easy to watch Doctor Who serials are 4 episodes. If they're 6 to 8 episodes, they can often be a slog.
A lot of kind of padding.
Yes.
Keep going until you're saying things like the costumes in the Web Planet were very good, given what they had to work with.
I suppose.
Actually, the Web Planet, that's the one with the giant bees and moths. And
with the obviously cellophane wings.
Actually, there's a lot to be said for the Twin Dilemma.
We don't talk about the Twin Dilemma.
What is the Twin Dilemma? I can't recall.
Sixth Doctor.
There is some context for...
Is that Colin Baker, sixth?
Yes, and there is some context for why the Twin Dilemma is so bad, because it is the final serial of that season, and it's the only time where they've introduced a Doctor in the last serial and had them be the main Doctor of that. Because, the Caves of Androzani, which you mentioned earlier as being a really good one, Peter Davison dies and regenerates at the end of that serial. And the following serial is a Twin Dilemma. It's the last serial of the season.
Oh, okay.
And now, the 80s was not kind to Doctor Who because it was run by a bunch of guys who had no idea what they were doing. Caves of Androzani was written by Robert Holmes, who co-wrote most of the Golden Age. Well, not most of the Golden Age. He wrote some of the best stories. So Caves of Androzani is an absolute banger. It's one of the all-time greats. It was directed by someone who actually cared about it. Graham Harper, the director, his catchphrase was, "Loads of energy," before saying action. Terrific serial. It riffs on Dune, it riffs on Star Wars, and it riffs on The Phantom of the Opera. It's a perfect serial. And then they followed up with The Twin Dilemma, which was basically thrown together over tea and biscuits, had really, the writers just didn't know what they were doing.
Oh dear.
Super low budget, because it was the last serial of the season, and historically speaking, they usually have to cheap it out because they've already spent all the budget. And the other thing is that throughout the Caves of Androzani, the Doctor and his companion are slowly dying of poisoning, and in the end, the Doctor gets two vials of antidote, but he drops one of them, so he feeds the remaining one to his companion, and he sacrifices himself. And so he's basically just spent 4 episodes, which is 2 weeks in real time, because at that point it aired twice a week, trying to save his companion, and in a fit of post-regeneration trauma, the 6th Doctor tries to strangle him.
Oh, that's right. Yes, the infamous. Yeah, Colin Baker did not get off to a good start, did he?
Which is a shame, because he is a huge fan of the show.
Really?
Yeah, he'd been watching it since day one.
Wow. And his Doctor is...
He was, I believe he was flatmates with Patrick Troughton's son, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But he is a massive fan, and he got given some truly awful scripts to work with, where the show had a very low budget, and he was made to wear that awful costume, which he detested.
But he was absolutely fantastic, again, in the audios.
All right, the audio adventures with Colin Baker are quite worth a listen.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, well, let's move on to hardcore mode now. So easy mode was you just cherry pick all the best episodes for them to watch from classics on. Hardcore mode is, it introduces it as saying, for some purists, however, the viewing order is kind of sacrilege. And it's to watch it in, they say chronological order, right?
Chronological from an in-universe standpoint.
Well, no, chronological order, from production, right? So it goes on to say, well, there's a bit of a controversy, right? So it sets up this idea that at the moment in America, there's a lot of American fans who are crying out, warning other fans not to binge the original series. While Doctor Who aired in the UK as series of weekly 25-minute episodes with a cliffhanger, in the US these episodes were edited together into movies to be watched in one sitting, right? So I guess you could binge in America. Have you ever seen these movies, US movies?
So does that mean that they've just taken out the end and opening credits?
I'm curious, to see how they've compressed these 25-minute episodes into a movie that you then watch as you would watch binging, 6 episodes or 4 episodes.
That's how they were released on VHS. That was a pretty common thing.
Oh, really? Right.
It was a pretty common thing for serialized narratives in the 90s, was that they did it with Dragon Ball Z as well. They just cut out the opening and closing credits. And there's just rolls from one episode straight into the next one.
Well, I guess this raises the question of you need to, as the article points out, you need to ration out how you're going to watch Doctor Who. Like, yes, watch it chronologically, but don't binge it. I guess because you'll hit those episodes which are a lot of filler and it can sap your will to live.
Well, yeah, because it was designed to be watched one episode per week. When it aired on the ABC 20 years ago, it was one episode per night, so it was a lot easier to watch it. I imagine some of them would be torturous if you tried it, because the Daleks Master Plan is 14 episodes.
That's true.
That would take you 2.5 months to watch it one episode a week, and it must be absolute torture.
Because it's interesting because my son was talking about One Piece, and because the anime series has been going so long, you can't just pick it up and decide to start watching it because it's a huge contribution of time. So there's websites now which just say the episodes you have to watch and the ones which are filler. And you can kind of compress it down into a more manageable, month or two of getting up to speed. Similar problem with Doctor Who, I guess. You just got to... And that was the great thing about the ABC's live broadcasts, or when they rescreened it, was that, you were stuck in that appointment viewing again. And it was nightly, I want to say, Monday to Thursday?
Monday to Thursday, yeah. 6 p.m.
So the article goes on to say there are benefits for watching the show this way. That is chronologically as it was produced from William Hartnell, episode 1, then episode 2, 3, 4, so forth. You get to see the Doctor truly evolve from a cranky, amoral old kidnapper. Would that be a fair description of William Hartnell's first performance? Yeah, that he kidnapped into a hero, a trickster, and a clown.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
That's what he called when the first Doctor, William Hartnell, comes back for the Three Doctors, the 10th anniversary special. That's what he says to Troughton and Poe. He says, "Ah, sir, you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown."
So it's a good. So you get to see this evolution as they were producing the character. And as we were saying, you get to see that synchronized discussion with the audiobooks as well later on. It's a bit of a contribution or a commitment. The third mode of watching Doctor Who that is suggested is the ultra hardcore mode, chronological order. And this is the one that I think would be fun to explore the debate around, because it's not chronological order from the Doctor's perspective, where you watch him as the first Doctor, William Hartnell, and then the second Doctor and so forth. Instead, it's
chronological in time.
In time.
That's ridiculous.
No. No, isn't. So the article suggests you could start with that caveman episode, right? But it suggests probably earlier, right? So there's the episode Edge of Destruction, where the Doctor and his companions are hurled back to the beginnings of the solar system. Or it suggests Castrovalva.
Castrovalva.
I'm sorry. That's why I've got you guys here. When the TARDIS flies back to the Big Bang, right? So both those are kind of 0 points in time, or early dates in time. Then the goal's to watch Doctor Who in the order of historical time period. So it suggests you could hit some really interesting arcs. You'll see the first Doctor potentially burn down Rome, then the 10th Doctor cause an eruption at Pompeii, and the 11th Doctor getting locked in Pandorcia?
The Pandorica.
What is the Pandorica?
It's basically a jail cell.
Ah, the 11th Doctor. Who are we up to there? That's
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith. Oh, okay, I missed that. Then the 12th Doctor teaming up with the band of Legionnaires and the Celtic rebels to fight the light-eating monster. I do vaguely remember that. Okay, then it gets pretty weird arcs. You'll see the fifth Doctor. The first Doctor will meet King Richard at the Crusades. Then you'll have the 12th Doctor fighting the Sheriff of Nottingham. Then the 5th Doctor foiling the Master's attempt to use Prince John in one of his schemes. The entire 19th century is going to be really, really busy. And then, it's going to have some really interesting quirks of continuity. It points out you have the second Doctor's evil twin falling out of the TARDIS at the end of The Enemy of the World, which is set in 2018. And then you'll have the 13th Doctor falling out of her TARDIS at the beginning of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which is also set in 2018. It points out that from the 29th century to the 1600th century, there'll be no stories, and there are no stories set on Earth, which I didn't realize. And it's because the Beast Below and the Arc of Space point out that Earth has been wrecked by solar storms for that whole time, except during the Ice Warriors, which is an ice age during that time. Would you, do you reckon that would work? Try to watch it in chronological order from time?
No, it's absolute nonsense. Might as well just watch it in alphabetical order.
No. Well, watching it in time order would be fun in some ways, right? I like that kind of... you get to see the first Doctor with King Richard in the Crusades, then you jump straight to the 12th Doctor for the Sheriff of Nottingham, and then the 5th Doctor for Prince John. That'd be fun.
I do like the idea of going straight from The Enemy of the World to The Woman Who Fell to Earth, just because The Enemy of the World was made in 1966 or 67, and it's very much what they thought 2018 would be like from a 1960s point of view. And it's also just a good story because it's the only one in that season of Patrick Troughton that is not a base under siege, and it's also the one because Patrick Troughton plays the main villain of that story.
What's his name? Salamander.
Ramon Salamander, who is meant to be Mexican, but he plays him with a South African accent for some reason.
All right, so just before we skip to the next series or franchise that many people have problems with the viewing order in, what do we think about those ideas for Doctor Who viewing order? Are they getting you excited to rewatch Doctor Who?
I would say this: if you watch it in sequence, you will get sick of individual Doctors.
True.
Because
who do you think would be the hardest Doctor to just plow through to watch?
I would say Tom Baker,
right?
Which to a lot of people is sacrilege, but Tom Baker's era is extremely inconsistent in both tone and quality. Those first 3 seasons are absolutely brilliant, but they're also really hardcore on the horror. After that, they slash the budget and they also slash the horror and they dial up the humor. And
who's the companion in those?
So for the first 3, it's for Harry and Sarah Jane in his first, then just Sarah Jane in his second, then the third one it's Sarah Jane, then he's solo for one story, then there's Leela. And then the 4th season of Tom Baker is when they bring in K9.
Oh, right, and that's the one you're saying it kind of costs sink and comedy rises.
The budget goes down, the attempts at humor go up, and basically I'm all for humorous Doctor Who. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Like City of Death is a good story. It's very overplayed in terms of everyone saying it's the best one ever. It's just because it was written by Douglas Adams. But it is a good story. It's got a good villain. It's like Julian Glover plays the main bad guy in that one. He's the only actor to be a bad guy in Star Wars, Doctor Who, Indiana Jones, James Bond, and Game of Thrones, and probably some others as well. But it's just when there's an increase in humor, there's a lack of tension. which means it's harder to get invested. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah.
So, so you think the Tom Baker, the whole run will be tough. First three seasons will be great, but then, yep. Do you have any thoughts, Taylor? A particular canon of Doctor Who that'll be tough to get through?
That would be tough to get through.
Yeah, the black and white
A
stuff.
lot of Colin Baker's televised is hard to get through.
The good thing about Colin Baker, though, is that he wasn't there for very long because he got fired.
Yeah.
And he was fired because, audience numbers were plummeting and they needed to rejig the series and, yeah.
They're also getting a lot of critique from Mary Whitehouse.
And Mary Whitehouse is?
She was a conservative media critic.
Oh, right.
Who would come down on any kind of violence in quote-unquote children's programming. Yeah. And I'm not saying that Doctor Who isn't a kids' show, but it was on at like 6 p.m. for families to watch together.
Anything to do with Adric's pretty difficult to watch as well.
That's Peter Davidson's Doctor?
Yeah.
With Adric, yep.
Also, just Tom Baker's last season, I don't mean to harp on it, but it's the first one where John Nathan Turner's a producer. And it's just, and it's I think it's also the first one that Eric Saywood wrote. John Nathan Turner was very much, he was trying to create a marketable product. He wasn't trying to create a good piece of entertainment. And it really shows. And you can just tell that Baker does not want to be there.
Yes.
And it's that.
Right.
It's when Peter Davison shows up, it's a huge sigh of relief.
Such a surprise to me. I mean, Tom Baker, I loved watching as a kid, and I must admit, I didn't really make it through probably to these last seasons. I'm feeling, because he's such a fan favorite. Yet, as you're pointing out. Yeah, you can hit these really... All right, well, just skipping quickly to Star Wars, because I wanted to mention that was another one I was looking up. People debate the order to watch it in. Some people say chronological order, where it's, Phantom Menace. You start Phantom Menace, then Attack of the Clones, to Rise of Skywalker, right? So as they were set in universe. Then the other version to watch them in is theatrical release order. So you start then with... Was it 1973?
77.
77? Oh. With New Hope, episode 4, New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Then you wait a long while, and then The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, so forth. But the version which was new to me, which you knew, Marcus, I don't know if you know it, Taylor, is called the Machete Order.
Yes, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. Because my daughter's wanting to watch Star Wars. She's not watched them all yet. So this one appealed to me because it starts with the ones I want to watch, which is A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And then it says, at The Empire Strikes Back, of course, Luke discovers the truth about Darth Vader. Spoiler. I like gesturing to that. So then what you do is you do the second and third prequel as the flashback. So then you go from Empire Strikes Back to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So you witness how Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader after that reveal. What? I know. Shock. It's always the journey, though. So you watch those two, then Return of the Jedi. Basically, you don't worry about the Phantom Menace. Right, you just don't watch it.
Just ignore it.
You just do Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, then you Return of the Jedi, then you do Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, and then, if you want, Phantom Menace.
Until the end.
I have a lot of nostalgia for Phantom Menace because I saw it twice in the cinemas and I thought it was the dopest thing ever when I was 9. But it also just literally can't slot in with the others. It is a huge continuity error.
Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and it's based around...
Well, you got the midichlorians. I mean, the great thing about skipping Phantom Menace is you don't really have to worry about midichlorians much. It's not really mentioned much in those later two films, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. And Jar Jar isn't in it much. And so, yeah, it does away with a lot of Phantom Menace.
And the real problem with Phantom Menace from a continuity perspective is that it completely retcons Obi-Wan Kenobi's backstory. Because in the original trilogy, he says that he was trained by Yoda, and that when he met Anakin Skywalker, Anakin was already an accomplished pilot. And in The Phantom Menace, he's trained by another Jedi, Qui-Gon Jinn, who is Jesus and not Yoda. And Anakin is a child who is a pod racer and a slave, not an accomplished war hero already.
Yeah.
So If you skip Phantom Menace, then it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I'm not a defender.
But
Disney.
I will defend the lightsaber duels in Phantom Menace. They are really sick.
Yes. Yeah, and Darth Maul, good character design there. Disney has released its own narrative timeline, which basically absorbs most of the animation work, right? So if you're curious, you can see where the Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, and Mandalorian kind of all fit in with some of the animated adventures. Yeah. So I'm thinking I might get my daughter to watch it in the machete order. And then we'll watch Phantom Menace at the end. Just 'cause for the memes. And then Solo, Rogue One, maybe. Great. Well, look, that's pretty much the show. Any last words? I mean, you mentioned Indiana Jones. Anything? Is that going to open up a whole can of worms?
Because Temple of Doom's a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's set a couple of years earlier.
Right.
So you can either watch that in release order, or you can watch it 2, 1, 3, 4, 5. But you ideally wouldn't watch the 5th one.
Which is the Dial of Destiny.
Yes.
Which, yeah.
Also, if you're going to binge all the James Bond movies, skip You Only Live Twice, because it and On Her Majesty's Secret Service are mutually exclusive. Like, they can't coexist.
Well, see, now you're getting me excited, because we were talking off air about how I love those fan theories linking the Sean Connery movie, The Rock, to Sean Connery's earlier Bond adventures. I couldn't remember if it was Dr. No that it was linked to. You're saying it was actually Diamonds Are Forever, because there's a line.
Well, at the end of Diamonds Are Forever, he basically commits domestic terrorism by blowing up an oil tanker.
You're right. Yeah, I think you're right. And that would be reason that the US government could, because basically Sean Connery, James Bond has been arrested and imprisoned. So would conceivably he have been imprisoned by the US authorities at the end of that film?
I could believe it, because he does a lot of damage to Las Vegas and the surrounds in Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah, and the British government could have just disowned him.
Basically,
right?
yeah.
And and that's of course, it's not on script James Bond in canon in The Rock, but fans have said it's Bond. I mean, conceivably. Yeah. All right, well, anyway, that's Media Mothership. Show notes are available on YouTube. Keep listening. Coming up next, we have K-pop. Do we have K-pop Unlimited?
Yeah, we do.
Great. Anything you want to mention?
No, I'm playing the same song again.
Oh, all the same songs from last week?
No, not all the same song. The same song that I played last week, that was the same song as the one last week. I'm playing this week as well.
Gangnam Style. Okay, probably not. You can... what else? So listen to previous episodes on YouTube, Twitch, and edgeradio.org.au, or your podcast provider of choice. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe. Leave a review. How can people reach out to you, Marcus, if they want to find out more about quizzes and so forth?
Hit up tazpop.org.au or go to Tazpop on Facebook or on Instagram.
Tazpop. And that's the local Tasmanian Pop
Culture Society.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Marcus, Taylor, thank you so much for joining Media Mothership for another week.